Hello, folks. We're going to get started in a minute, so if I could ask you all to take your seats. I think we're ready to get started. Could I ask everybody to please take their seats? Thank you. Somebody want to give a shout to the folks outside and let them know that we're going to start? I'd appreciate it. India Miller. India Miller. Can you skedaddle everybody in from the outside? I knew if anybody can do the job, it's you, sis. How's everybody feeling today? We're so happy you're here. I have a funny story. Well, it's funny now. It wasn't funny before. Carol and I couldn't figure out why nobody was signing up. So, we beat the bushes. Well, at the very last moment, I guess it was, Thursday night? We figured out that our registration had jumped the shark. And we weren't getting the registrations that people were making. So we went from 23 to 67, and people are still signing up. So all's well that ends well, I guess. So in any case, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today, particularly our special guest, Jennifer Brookshire, who came all the way from Gloucester, Mass., and Sue Woltansky, who probably had the worst or the most difficult trip driving up from the Keys. So we're glad to have them here with us today. Let's give them all a round of applause. So I would like to start the session with Sharon Howard, who is the head of the, if I get this wrong, Sharon, you can slap me, head of the social justice unit of the Unitarian Universalist. She's going to welcome everybody to the church. Thank you. You want to come up, Sharon?
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning. I'm Sharon Howard, the Social Justice Chairperson here. Welcome, esteemed guests, teachers, parents, and students. On behalf of the Social Justice Committee of Sarasota, we're so glad that you're spending your Saturday with us today. Your presence makes this program a public education advocacy forum, Stronger Together, truly special. We hope that this gathering will be a source of inspiration and a learning experience for everyone. And thank you, sponsors, Families for Strong Public Schools, the Florida PTA, Sea Alliance, Sarasota Parents United, Support Our Schools, and the UU Social Justice Committee. We have a packed agenda, so let's get the morning started. Enjoy the program. Please join me for a moment as we light the chalice, which is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Okay.
As we light this chalice, it kindles the spirit of the great journey, the movement for justice alive in this nation today. May we feel it in our bones and in the stillness of the tower. May we sense it calling our name.
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate that. We are very lucky to have two esteemed guests with us today. If anybody, well, most of you here are obviously concerned about public education, and for me, there are two sources where I always get my best information, and that would be Jennifer Brookshire's books and her podcast, and Sue Woltansky's Accountable Baloney. So if you don't already subscribe, make sure that you do. I'd first like to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Jennifer Berkshire. Jennifer Berkshire writes about education and politics for The Nation, The New Republic, The Baffler, The New York Times, and many other publications. She is the creator and co-host of the education policy podcast, Have You Heard? And she also teaches in the prison education program at Boston College and the education studies program at Yale. She is the author, along with Jack Schneider, of The Education Wars, A Citizen's Guide and Defense Manual, and A Wolf at the Schoolhouse Door, The Dismantling of Public Education and the Future of School. With that, I'd like to have a Sarasota welcome to Jennifer Berkshire.
Well, thank you so much for that, Sarasota welcome. It is so nice to be here and to enjoy your incredible weather. As Lisa mentioned, I live up north of Boston in Gloucester, and we have had a single warm day so far. Last week, the temperature rose into the 70s, and you can imagine we all staggered outside, pale and blinking. And even as I stand up here right now, the temperature is plummeting. On Monday, it will be in the 30s. So if you're wondering, why is Jennifer outside when we're having these important discussions? That's why. Can I have the first slide, please? And the second slide. So I'm going to start off. This is not the bridge going to Tampa. This is actually a picture of Hungary, the bridge into Budapest, some 5,000 miles away. Some of you may know that there was a significant election in Hungary last weekend. And the reason that I wanted to tell you about it is because many of the things that you've been living through in Florida when it comes to what's happening with your state elected officials in your schools are actually modeled on policies that were rolled out in Hungary first. The takeover of the new college just down the road got the idea from Hungary. Don't say gay, they did it first. And so what was really interesting to me was that during this election, education turned out to be a really big issue. The opposition leader would travel all over the country, including to conservative rural areas. And he really didn't talk that much about Orban being a strong man and authoritarianism. He hit these sort of essential bread and butter issues, and education was at the top of the list. Because Hungary's economy is basically stalled and sinking, and people can see it in the state of their schools. Their teachers are underpaid. The schools are falling apart. But the other thing that people are really sensitive to is that just like here in Florida, the state has played a very aggressive role in using the schools to drive a particular political and cultural agenda. And that combination of things, feeling like the schools are falling apart in front of their eyes, combined with the sense that the state was using the schools as vehicles of propaganda, it turned out to make people really mad. Next slide, please. And this is pretty weird. There's even a voucher angle. Who would have thought, right? Like, you probably think this is a Florida thing. So one of the things that Hungary did was, just like we're seeing in this country, officials diverted funds away from public schools, which is why they're falling apart, and into religious schools. And so this meant that for kids who were not welcome in those schools, they were then stuck in what was left of the public schools, where the teachers were leaving or underpaid and where there weren't enough resources. And it happened that in Hungary, this fell particularly hard on one ethnic group, the Roma. They're locked out of these private schools. And because Hungary has been on this road longer than a lot of communities in this country, we can see what happened. And that was that their future prospects began to diminish. That it wasn't just that they were stuck in schools that didn't have enough resources, it was then their futures were limited, that they were basically being consigned to low-income jobs. And so, lo and behold, as the education nears, the New York Times does a big story that the fate of Orban, the strongman, may actually rest on angry Roma parents. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Next slide. And then we know what happens next. The results of the election last week were overwhelming. The opposition leader won in a landslide, and so there's been it's really inspiring because it has been such a model for leaders on the right in this country. In the lead up to the election, Vice President Vance was there trying to rally the troops. President Trump called in. He did sort of get out the vote, please, on social media, and alas, those encouragements fell a little bit short. And so I think it's a very encouraging example for us, but the fact that education turned out to be such a central issue, and in a way that's so familiar to us. The idea that our state officials are saying, you know what, we're not so keen on having traditional public schools anymore. We want the funding to go elsewhere. And those of you who are still making use of the public schools, or you're in communities where they are the center, too bad, so sad. Next slide, please. Now we're headed back over to this side of the pond, where something else very interesting happened at the polls. Last week, we also had a number of school board elections, and continuing a trend that has really been playing out over the last 5 years, we saw something really interesting happen. In communities that were absolutely central to the effort to sort of take back America through the schools, conservative candidates and conservative slates were absolutely wiped out. And I want to just mention a couple of these because they really matter. And so one is Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you all may be familiar with a gentleman named Ryan Walters. The fact that somehow we know the name of the top education official of Oklahoma really tells you something. He has since left that position, and I believe that the door did hit him on the way out. But what was really interesting was that there was one last person left on that school board who was part of that initial attempt to really try to nationalize local school politics. and make it all about first masks and then CRT and then LGBTQ issues. Inevitably, there was a mention of furries and litter boxes. You name it. This candidate was all about it. And what you saw over time was that a really substantial coalition of people came together in Tulsa across party lines. And what they did that I think was really remarkable and reminds me a lot of what's been happening here in Sarasota is that they managed to recruit sort of just normal people to run for the school board. People who they didn't have a particular political agenda, and they didn't think of themselves as activists necessarily. They were parents and they were community members who just really cared about both the state of the city's schools and the future of their community and of the kids who live there. And what I think is so encouraging for those of us who have been part of this larger movement is seeing that strategy work. So that last conservative candidate is gone. I'll mention just a couple of others. There's a community outside of St. Louis that, again, part of an early effort to take over the school board. All those PACs you hear about, Mamas for Liberty, 1776. And back, a few years ago, they succeeded. And just like in Tulsa, this election marked the kind of climactic conclusion to that effort. The last of the conservative slate is gone. And then finally, I just want to take us to the suburbs of Milwaukee. Anyone in the crowd move here from Wisconsin? And so this, too, is a very interesting experiment because these conservative parent activist groups had a plan in Wisconsin that they, too, were going to sort of nationalize these local elections. And this was going to be the way that they turned these suburban counties around Milwaukee. They turned them red from here on out. And I think what's interesting for us to learn from is that their efforts had the exact opposite effect. The Waukesha has its first Democratic mayor. Like one after another, people didn't just reject the individual candidates. They rejected the vision of sort of angry parent groups. And they rallied around candidates who had a positive vision for the schools and for the community. Of course, we will continue to see similar sorts of candidates run. It's happening right now in the community where we are. But to me, I think if we look at the long-term story of this effort to really nationalize these elections and really tap into parent anger and a sense of grievance, I think what we see is a line that goes like this. And, people are sick to death of the culture wars, but there's another reason too. Next slide, please. I just love this quote. This is from a gentleman named Jonathan Collins. He's an academic and he leads an institute at Columbia. And he was asked by Newsweek to offer some kind of explanation for why these conservative candidates and slates fared so poorly in local elections. And what he said, it actually reminded me a lot of the verdict in Hungary. He said, this is a clear sign that people really care about things like material well-being. And then he has this line: nothing better represents America's aspirations for tomorrow than schools. And so I want us to think about where we are right now. We are in the state of Florida. And we could look at what's happened in education policy and politics at your state, and we could reach the conclusion, man, they really have it out for the public schools and the people who work in them. But, we could look at it a different way too, and we could say, if this statement is true, that nothing represents America's aspirations for tomorrow better than schools, then your elected officials are coming after that. And that, I think, is a difficult pill for a lot of people to swallow. Not just, hardcore public school activists like the wonderful organizers of this event, but people who live in communities like Sarasota, who send their kids to school here and understand that schools are central to the identity of a place. And this is particularly true if you go to a rural community. And I'm sure some of you are from small towns. And the idea that you're now in a state where your elected officials are doing everything they can to undermine the symbol of the future, I think is really dangerous. And I think it is fueling a backlash that has not gotten nearly enough attention. Next slide, please. This is, I did a little screenshot from I do a weekly-ish newsletter on Substack called The Education Wars. And one of the themes that I have been pounding relentlessly is that the media keeps missing the conservative backlash to school vouchers. And I spend a lot of time interviewing folks on the ground in places like Texas and Tennessee and Iowa and Idaho. Because when you think about it, vouchers as a policy are a really awkward fit for a conservative movement that for as long as I've been alive was all about watching our tax dollars like a hawk. Right? Like that's how they talked when I was growing up, that, government spending was waste. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. And so suddenly you see these states that are enacting these enormous school voucher programs. And if you're in a state that was led by Republicans during the pandemic, right, and you're a conservative activist, you were mad about their response to COVID. The people you were mad at were not, your blue state nanny governors or the teachers unions. You were mad at Greg Abbott. You were mad at the Republican governor of your state. So you get really worked up, you have marches, you descend on the state house, you use language that sometimes is menacing and scary. And then the next thing you see your elected officials do is enact a $1 billion voucher program. To these people, it makes no sense at all. They see vouchers not as education freedom, but as a government takeover of private and religious schools. And you can look around the country and you think, they may be onto something. In Iowa, for example, which has a newer program, the state is now picking up the tab for 99% of students who attend private religious schools. That is shocking. And so if you're somebody who, leans a little bit conspiratorial, like I talk to people all the time and they're telling me, there is something going on here, right? This isn't about education freedom at all, because what the government funds, the government runs. And so what this has done, it's opened up this really interesting political opportunity, because you have grassroots activists who are really mad. But then you have more moderate Republicans who, never stopped sending their kids to public schools. And they're hearing day in and day out the craziest claims being made by their elected officials about the schools where they send their kids. And they look around and they're like, I don't know what he's talking about. Why is he saying there are litter boxes in the lunchroom? This makes no sense. So you have these both of these groups who are very important in constituencies. They need to turn out for candidates to win. And then finally, you have the kind of theory of change that delivered these huge and expensive voucher programs to so many states in the wake of the pandemic. And this is the idea that if you're going to be a Republican, you have to support this. And if you don't, we're going to use Betsy DeVos's money to take you out. And so you have people on the ground in these states, and they're like, this is all being driven by billionaires, and I am no longer represented. And to me, this feels like a really potentially explosive mix. I know what you've been experiencing in Florida is a little different. Florida is more of a slow-moving train because your voucher program grew slowly over time, as we're going to hear from Sue. But as you all know from what's happening right here in Sarasota, communities now are really feeling the pinch. And they're also being told, sorry, we can't represent you. This is a litmus test issue for us. And while we're at it, we're going to continue to make the most extreme and outrageous claims about the schools that your kids attend, even as we divert money away from them. So we kind of see, we're picking up on some themes here. Next slide, please. The other thing that I think is really important to consider is what a terrible fit for our populist moment a concept like universal school vouchers are. The idea that we're going to take money away from an institution that serves all kids, the single most socialist thing we do in this country, right? The idea that, can you imagine somebody getting up here today and saying, I've got a really neat idea. Let's take the better part of $1 trillion and we're going to send every kid in this country to school, grades kindergarten through 12 for free, and they don't even have to be legal citizens. Can you imagine that pitch being made on the campaign trail? Your Board of Education would have to add 10 more anti-communist pages to the new curriculum just to inoculate against that. And so then you think about like, well, how do universal school vouchers work? Well, they say that no matter how wealthy you are, we're going to pick up the tab for your child's private school education. And so we see the same story playing out in state after state, even places that have had vouchers for a while. Floodgates open, inevitably the demographic of the people making use of the program gets whiter and wealthier, and shockingly so, right? So that in places like Oklahoma, which is not a wealthy state, something like a third of the voucher money goes to the top earners. It doesn't make sense to people. So when I talk to folks on the ground in these states, and they're just trying to make sense of what's happening in their state. And frankly, some of the explanations they come up with are a little kooky. They do occasionally involve the United Nations or the World Economic Forum. But a lot of what the explanation they come up with is simply that left and right is not as important anymore as bottom and top. And that what they're experiencing is the incredible influence of deep-pocketed people in their states. Sometimes they're homegrown, like West Texas oil billionaires, but a lot of times it's somebody who doesn't even live in their state. It's Jeff Yass, the richest man in Pennsylvania, who made his money through hedge funds, for whom school choice is a personal crusade. He sweeps in, gives the governor $21 million. Next thing you know, the rural Republicans who were against vouchers are wiped out. Imagine you're just, you're some grassroots conservative trying to make sense of this. It feels pretty crazy, and it's actually it's giving you more of a populist lens, not less. Next slide. So I want to take us back to Florida because something kind of amazing happened here just a few weeks ago. You also had some special elections. The lovely woman on my left is Emily Gregory. Anybody familiar with her name? Yeah, so Emily Gregory is now representing the district that includes Mar-a-Lago, which is pretty rich when you think about it. And then the gentleman on the right is Brian Nathan. Anybody know him? So Brian Nathan is not that far away. He's representing the district that includes Tampa and also Damaris Allen. So what's so interesting about these special elections? Well, one is that, I always go, I always rush to the scene to see, I wonder what education had to do with any of this. And so Emily Gregory ran a campaign that was kind of similar to the opposition leader who crushed Hungary's strongman. She really focused on affordability, and she talked a lot about the outrageous cost of health insurance in Florida, and she talked a lot about the sorry state of the schools, and particularly the crisis of school funding. And you know what? People really rallied to her cause. And then Brian Nathan, I think, is an even more interesting person. One, because he won by only a handful of votes, but also he ran and won as a union electrician. And if you paid attention to your most recent legislative session in Florida, you know that unions are bad for Florida and we need to get rid of them ASAP. So here comes this guy, and he runs as, like an unabashed union member. And he had some great description of sort of like his way of being in the world. And it was kind of like steel-toed honesty. And that was his theme. And so then I always go look like, well, what did he have to say about education? And, there he is running on, what's his priority going to be? Repealing the law that went after teachers' unions. And so I think this is really amazing. Here, this guy was not supposed to win. He didn't have much money. Nobody had really heard of him. And he won on stuff that, that just got sort of, jammed through the legislature. So this tells me that there is something really interesting going on. Both of those candidates, by the way, ran against school vouchers, or at least on much stricter guardrails about how the programs are run and who gets to make use of the money. Next slide, please. Now, of course, you don't need me to tell you where this slide is from. This, of course, is Sarasota, downtown, and this was your No Kings rally just a few weeks ago, and boy, what an inspiring scene. We were talking about it last night at dinner, and, they told me how many people were there, but when I saw the pictures, I was so impressed. So this is a visual demonstration to us that we're stronger together, and that the effort to protect, defend, and improve our public schools is actually central to that movement. I would argue that, a huge part of the reason why your elected officials have gone after the teachers union, which is the largest union, they're the single largest group of organized workers around the country, it has nothing to do with student achievement. The role that teachers unions have played in the US since they became a thing, basically back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, is to show that we're stronger together and to demand things that benefit everybody. And that includes things like a more generous welfare state, higher minimum wage, all the things that your officials have been laboring so intently with the aid of their wealthy backers to undo. It's the appalling reality that so many kids in Florida go without health care. That's never going to change unless we're stronger together. And that is exactly what your officials recognize. It's why they passed that law, and it's why they are so intent on trying to teach the kids that collective action is inherently bad. Good luck with that, by the way. And so that's really what I want to leave you with today. What you're doing is making a huge difference. It is an inspiration to those of us around the country. The fact that all the bad things happened in Florida first enables us to learn from you, but I think what we're really learning is a real cautionary tale for politicians who think that they can just they can use big money and the levers of state power to enact an agenda that's unpopular and to undermine institutions that really matter. So thanks to all of you, and I'm going to hand it over. Oh, one more thing. I do a podcast. It comes out every 2 weeks. I have my recording equipment here. I'm going to be doing an episode about Sarasota. And so if you would like to be part of it, I'll be basically like hovering around outside with my microphone. And I'm hoping to just bring the story of what's been happening here to life so that people in other parts of the country can learn from it and be inspired by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Isn't she great? Let's give her another round. Okay. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Sue Woltansky. Sue is, first and foremost, a public education advocate. She's also a retired pediatrician and mother of 2 public school graduates, and I also believe a recent college graduate. She has been following education policy in Florida for more than a decade. She also writes the blog Accountable Baloney, which I mentioned earlier. Sign up for it. If you want to know what's going on in Florida, best source ever. Her podcast, or rather her blog, focuses on the damaging effects of high-stakes testing and Florida's relentless, and relentless is the best word, privatization policy agenda. She was initially elected unopposed to the Monroe County School Board in 2018, re-elected in 2022, and I believe is running again. And she is one of only 5 school board candidates statewide to defeat a DeSantis-endorsed opponent that night. Hopefully there'll be a lot more this year. Sue Woltansky.
Thank you very much. Super excited to be here. Really excited to be here as like a co-presenter with Jennifer Berkshire. Her podcast got me through the pandemic. I would walk with her in my ears every day listening to her podcast. And I checked my bucket list because I was actually a guest on her podcast in the past year. So talking about schools of hope, I think, yeah. So I have been advocating for public education for more than a decade. When I started advocating, it didn't take long to realize that there was an underlying privatization effort going on, but you would dare not say it because you would be a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. If you were in Tallahassee, if you mentioned that, then you were not to be trusted, basically, because that was ridiculous. And I think a lot of that is actually true for the legislators. I think that they did not recognize what was being done. Privatization has been done with really great messaging that makes it seem not so dangerous. But this is a picture of the first time I formally stood in front of people and talked about privatization. And this was my how do you privatize public schools in 4 little steps. And this is from 2014, and that's the Grim Reaper. I was in Key West and walking to the talk, and I ran into the Grim Reaper, and I thought it was a perfect photo opportunity. So the strategy is to defund public schools, either by diverting money away or not keeping up with inflation or having unfunded mandates. and then label those schools as failing through standardized tests, or more recently, they're so dangerous because of school shootings, or they're gonna turn your children all gay, or make them think that it's okay to be gay, or basically tell your child that they're a different gender, and then you blame the teachers for that. We used to have, the teachers are graded on standardized test scores, and if the teachers were just better, all of the initiatives that they put in place, if the teachers were just following those initiatives better, the schools would be better. And then you offer escape. And what people may not know or remember is that when Jeb Bush was governor, his A+ plan included test all kids, grade the schools, offer vouchers to children who are in failing schools so they can leave them. The vouchers have been in place from day one of the standardized testing regime in Florida. We can go next slide. So none of this is random. It's done the way every big project is done in Florida, is one little bite at a time. And I think the pushback we're seeing now is because other people are following the Florida model and they're doing it all, but they're doing it all at once. And also, when we went to universal vouchers, nobody sued. And I really think they thought that there was going to be a lawsuit and that this would be a slow process and a rollout at that time. Next slide. So now they are saying the quiet parts out loud. 5 years from now, a majority of kids are going to be in private school choice program. That's Lindsay Burke in 2024. She was then working for the Heritage Foundation. She's now Assistant Secretary in the Department of Education. The next woman you probably know, but she was asked, Tiffany Justice, after she left Moms for Liberty, which she founded, to work for the Heritage Foundation. They've tired of her and she's not working for them now. But she was asked how many students should be in public school, and she thought ideally it would be 0, because America would be better if we just got rid of our public schools. So when people tell you things, you should believe them. Next slide. So I'm going to go over what happened this session, and spoiler alert, not much. There were 1,600 bills filed and 18 education-related bills passed. Even then, some of those bills had things that had small structural consequences, which, more bites at the infrastructure. Next slide. So what actually passed, there was one big omnibus bill which consolidated some of the more control to the state level. Notably, it had it allows the state to develop its own instructional materials, which is going to be very important because soon all our textbooks are going to have lots of anti-communism rhetoric in them. There was also some workforce things. There was some marketplace expansion, particularly with sports. Basically, kids can play sports wherever they want, meaning they can play wherever they're going to school. They can play sports at public schools and we'll have to pay for it. And then there was a big, horrible anti-union bill. Next slide. And there was a January surprise that not very many people, well, maybe people did take notice. I was in Cambodia on a vacation when this happened, so I didn't take notice immediately. I guess that's what I'm saying. The Office of Economic Demographics and Research do an estimating conference each year, and they came and presented in January to the legislation that there had been a marked decline in the number of students. 46,000 students were not in their seats in October when they did the counts, and that has never happened before. Florida is built, our whole economy is built on growth. And all of our record education funding comes from, we funded more students year after year, not because we necessarily gave them much more money. We can go to the next slide. So on January 13th, they presented this report. Basically what it says is that this was across the board. There were fewer homeschoolers, there were fewer private school students, there were fewer charter school students, there were fewer public school students, and there were fewer students on the PEP scholarship. 46,456 fewer students, which was a decline of 1.44%, and over 17,000 of those were English language learners. And then, the shot heard around the world is that someone from Tallahassee said, the most likely explanation for this is the chilling effects from the recently implemented immigration policies. I'm sure you're seeing that here in Monroe, where I live. Oh, wait, I was supposed to say, I'm a Monroe County School Board member, but nothing I say here is related, should be considered to be the word of the Monroe County School Board. These are all my personal ideas. Woo, I almost forgot that. 2 years ago in Key West, we had 600 new English language learners, mostly from Haiti. Our community really turned itself upside down to be welcoming to those kids, and to our adult ed classes would identify the most successful English language learners. They became our paraprofessionals. It was a remarkable change. This year we had 0 new ELL students. So next slide. So more importantly is what they did not do. They didn't pass a budget. They didn't address the problems with Schools of Hope co-location. They didn't respond to the Auditor General's report on voucher findings, and they did not protect academic acceleration funding as they had promised to do. Next slide. So there's only one bill that they have to pass, and that is the budget. That's the only required bill that the legislation has to pass. And this is now the second year in a row where they have not passed it on time. Last year it was signed the day before our budgets went into place. And this year it's likely going to take that long as well, even though the session was much earlier. It impacts the school districts. We are supposed to be planning our budgets right now, and we have no idea how much money we're going to have. Next slide. They didn't mitigate the Schools of Hope co-location. I'm going to give, this is a brief review of Schools of Hope. It actually starts about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. They passed a Schools of Hope law, which was incentives to out-of-state corporate charter chains to come in and set up. They were going to give them extra money to come in and set up in Florida because, because they were better, and that they were going to be better than the ones that we currently had. Last fall, wait, I guess that's 2 falls ago. In the fall of 2024, Success Academy, which is a New York-based charter school that co-locates in New York City schools, wanted to participate in Florida. They came and they started lobbying to participate here, and their lobbyists wrote the bill to allow them to co-locate in Florida schools. And one of their, Ken Griffin, one of their biggest fans, donated $50 million to lawmakers to make that happen. The bill passed the House easily, but wasn't even heard on the Senate side. And in a normal world, that would mean it was dead. But in the dark of night, really right before midnight, the night before they finalized the budget, the language was snuck in. And then in October last year, the State Board of Education, as it does, wrote the rules. And in the rules, they said if more than one School of Hope applies for to co-locate in an underused public school, then they would be chosen in a first come, first served way. And just like, I mean, that's not how school districts choose vendors in their school. That's not how anyone chooses to give out tax funds on whoever signs up first. Well, that caused a flood of applications from Hope operators, over 600 applications in over 22 districts, and multiple applications at the schools. And there was a lot of pressure on the legislature to rein that back in. There was a bill filed by Senator Rousseau. It was never heard. And the state board then made some rewrite of the rules, didn't change the first come, first serve, changed a little bit of the funding issues, and limited any School of Hope operator to only 5 schools in a certain number of year period. And coincidentally, that was the number of schools that Success Academy wanted to open. So they got exactly what they wanted. We can move on. Next slide. For those, this was the other big moment. In November, the Auditor General spoke at both the House and the Senate Education Appropriations Committee on a audit report of how the money was flowing from Step Up for Students, the scholarship funding organization, and the Department of Education. And this is Big Gates, Matt Gates's father, who has returned to the Senate, and this is his take on the Auditor General's findings. We can play this. Let's see.
First, today, the state does not know where students are at key points in the school year. Last year, we told you the state could not find 23,000 students on any given day. Today, the number is 30,000 students that we can't find. Taxpayers are paying for, but we can't find where they are. Second, today, we cannot ensure that the money is following the student to the family's provider of choice, especially when students are moving back and forth between providers. The amount of money which we cannot account for as being in the right place at the right time exceeds $270 million on any given day. For example, $100 million, which should have been paid to public school districts last year, was improperly paid to the SFOs for scholarships.
And it goes on. Next slide.
First, today, the state does not know where students are at key points in the school year. Last year, we told you the state could not find 23,000.
Oh, that went back. So this is a picture of Senator Danny Burgess. He's the chair of the Senate Education Appropriations Committee. His children are homeschooled on vouchers. This is his response during the presentation of, this really is his response during the presentation of the Auditor General's report. And Senator Gates went on to say that, this is not like a mistake. This is bad lawmaking. He said, we've met the enemy and it is us. And by the way, Senator Gates was instrumental in advancing vouchers during his first term when he was also Senate president. So he is not an anti-school choice guy. Next slide. So Senator Gates proposed a bill, 318, Senate Bill 318, that was a real fix and addressed all the issues, or the majority of the issues in the Auditor General's report. Most importantly, it tightened the oversight, it allowed, it protected districts from voucher overruns, and it separated voucher funding outside of the school funding formula into its separate pot of money so that if the vouchers ran over, it would not hurt public school. Oh, I probably should have mentioned that before. So last year, also at the end of the school year, the vouchers had been paid out in April, and they went $47 million over budget. So the public schools were all prorated down for their final months to make up the difference of the vouchers that were overspent. This bill was a priority of the Florida Senate. It passed on the first day of the regular session, and it passed unanimously. Next slide has the House response. I don't think so. So the House, this is Jenna Persons-Mullica. She chairs the House Budget Committee for pre-K-12. And they had during the committee weeks, they had 4 meetings in a row that addressed issues with vouchers. And on the final meeting, they heard the Auditor General's report. And that is the last time they discussed vouchers in that committee. They refused to take up the bill, and the chair made it clear that she thought that if they put a separate silo for voucher funds, that would allow someone someday to line item veto that out and to get rid of vouchers, and it would be what she called the end of school choice. So you see between Senator Gates and Rep. Persons Mullica, one believes they're saving vouchers by separating the funding and getting and making the spending conservative, really, like putting guardrails on this, and making sure that they are good stewards of tax dollars. And the other one is so worried that, they might get rid of vouchers that they don't care about the guardrails or anything of the findings of this, this audit. Next slide. So what was Senator Gates's response? He said, everything's going to get worse. More students will be left on track, more dollars, we won't know where they are. I made my thing widescreen, and I guess I needed to make it. Anyway, we're going to see same old. And as he said last year, it was 27,000 students. We didn't know where they are. This year, it's 30,000, and it's probably more than that. And I think, so Sarasota and Monroe are similar in the fact that in our funding formula, we as property owners are asked to generate a required local effort, which is 90% of the funding of our per pupil funding for students. And the state picks up 10%. That's because we're property-rich districts. Some of the less property-rich districts or the property-poor districts are going to 50-50 with the state. We don't get that 10% unless we generate the property tax that the state tells us to. And right now in both, and vouchers can only be paid out of the state part. Right now in both Sarasota and Monroe, all of our property tax funds our kids, and the state gives us none because it's completely taken up by voucher funding now.
Did you get a negative amount for your state dollars?
Yeah.
You ended up with a negative.
Sure. So one of the things, this might be weedy, maybe we can talk about it in questions. Ask me that in questions, because it's actually another reason why you should have the silo, and why the House decided to fix the thing in a way that's not structurally sound. But let's go to the next slide. They also so last year I was here talking about advanced placement, career and technical, and other acceleration incentives. That the state, for almost a decade now, they've paid extra money if a student passes a college level course or if they get a career certification. It was meant to incentivize those students enrolled in those courses and get us to push kids further. Last year they changed the way that was funded. Coincidentally, they put it in a separate silo, just like, and then they swore to us that it would be exactly the same money as that we were not going to experience any change in funding. So next slide, and I'll show. So what happened is that AP passing scores went up 14%. In industry certifications, remarkably went up 44%. There was a 29% increase in early graduation. All of these would have provided incentive funding, but there was a fixed pool of money. So each one of those was prorated down. And so we got less money for more success, right? Next slide. So what are the opportunities moving forward? We are going to have new leadership, so people need to choose carefully because that leadership could be Erica and Byron Donalds. And if you don't know Erica Donalds, she was initial advisor of Moms for Liberty, but she also started her own, she has made bank on charter schools and spends a lot of time at the White House advancing privatization. The cuts to acceleration and the co-location of schools of hope are very, very unpopular. Families are really not happy with those things, and so there's messaging ways that we can gather people together from multiple different fronts. And basically the fiscal math is getting hard to ignore. I mean, I think everyone's hearing there's teacher layoffs going on, and they're laying off administrators, and and go on. Next slide. Public schools don't appear, however, to be going away. This is actually last year's estimating report, but it predicted in the next 5 years that there would be a decline of about 66,000 students in public schools, but an increase in the vouchers of 240,000. So these are not, they don't predict a fleeing of students from public schools. They do predict that there will be more and more privately funded schools. And I've been working with Laura Hine from Pinellas, and she recently did the data, and it looks like of the voucher expansion, 92% of the students that we're currently funding on vouchers were in private schools to begin with. Next slide. This is the long-range financial outcomes report, which is interesting because in 28-29, it predicts a deficit of $6.575 million. No, billion dollars. 6.5, that's 600, yeah, 6.5 billion. And they also project that the state voucher program will also be $6.5 billion in 2028-29. It's a major driver of the deficit in the budget. Next slide. In addition, Florida has not kept up with inflation since the Great Recession. There were huge cuts made by Rick Scott, and since that time, we have not kept up with inflation, and we've moved from 25th in the nation for effort index, which is the percentage, the amount of education funding based as a percentage of GDP, to 48th in the nation. So we're putting less and less effort into funding our schools, and if we were, the orange line shows where we would be with average funding had we just kept up with inflation. Next slide. And this is how the tax credit scholarships have grown over that same period of time. For a long time, they were kind of steady at $1 billion. And then they've risen up, and they're expected to be over $6 billion within a few years. Next slide. So all of this, it's no longer theoretical. If you didn't see the news, the State Board of Education has declared financial emergencies in both Union County and Glades County. These are small school districts. And there's back of the bill money, $3 million in the budget to support these, to stabilize these schools. And $3 million might stabilize 2 little schools, but when Miami-Dade goes under, there will be no money in the budget to stabilize them. And all districts are feeling it, and we're going to have to insist that our schools start messaging the realities of this. And I overwhelmingly hear it's because kids are fleeing to go to private schools, but it isn't. In some cases, perhaps, but in my district, it's because we're paying for all those kids we never paid for before. And the immigrant children who we were counting on coming didn't come. Next slide. Oh, wow, that's really... this is what you get when you have a Mac and you then transform it. We need to remember that the Florida Constitution, that funding education is the paramount duty of our legislature, and they are required to adequately fund our schools, and that is defined as providing the provisions for a uniform, efficient, safe, secure, and high-quality system of free public schools that allows students to obtain a high-quality education. So the goal, they are required to fund public schools, not a marketplace of options. Next slide. So meanwhile, we don't have a budget. We're going to have a special session this week about redistricting. That's been moved to a week from now, and they've added medical freedom, which means school entrance vaccine requirements and some other things to it. But this is a quote from Florida Politics about from earlier this week. He said, he has a trip planned for Tuesday, and would it be safe to go? And the legislator said next Tuesday is safe, and the Tuesday after that is safe, and all the Tuesdays in May are probably safe. The two houses are $1.4 billion apart, and my understanding is they haven't even decided how to divide that money up into the big pots yet. And if all of this is meant to be disruptive, it definitely is. And so delaying the funding really disrupts every aspect of our local governments and our state government as well, because we cannot predict what we're going to do next. And disruption is a tool that is often used to drive privatization. Let's move on. So this is my list of recommended resources. Did I put you up there? Oh, Jennifer, I didn't put you up there. So if you scan this, you can get to my Substack and sign up for Accountability. We're lucky here in that the Tampa Bay Times has an education grade book which tells you all the education things that are happening around the state. Sort of it ties you into the articles. You can follow legislation through floridasenate.gov, floridahouse.gov, and you can watch legislation or what's going on in Tallahassee at the Florida Channel. My watch is telling me that people are signing up as new Substack survivor. Thank you. Also on Substack is Jason Garcia's Seeking Rents. He has delved into education, but he really talks about corruption, and corruption is a huge issue. And I also think corruption is a bipartisan concern. I'm also giving a little shout out to Laura Hine, who has been doing incredible work messaging about the vouchers. She has started a new not-for-profit called Educating Florida's Future, and that's out of Pinellas, and so you may find like-minded people through that organization that you want to work with. Let's see, I think there's one more. Next slide. Oh yeah, this is my son's second grade little project. He had to write about a famous person, which he wrote about me. I like to say that yeah, it looks just like me. And if you can't read it, it says that I'm famous for writing a super popular education blog called Accountability. It might actually change Florida. Aw, isn't it sweet? Well, it hasn't yet, but I'm still trying. And I'm going to put out a little, I do thank you for following me. I am running for re-election. I'm not up here asking about that anything but forgiveness, because I have a lot of balls in the air, and accountability is one of the things that is a little bit on the back burner right now because there's just too many other things to deal with. But thank you so much for your attention and for having me here. Thanks. Do you want us to stay up here?
Yeah.
What color of microphone would you like?
Red. I want the red one. Okay, we're going to have a question and answer session. Carol's going to be roaming the room. Deb, could you? Oh, we have a couple of people back there already, and Carol will have one as well. So if you would like to ask a question. Okay, we're a little technical. Carol, I don't think you're turned on. Okay.
Hello? Is it on?
No. Yeah, there it is.
It's on? Ooh. Okay.
Definitely on.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for being here. As you can hear, I have a communication disorder, so bear with me. In 1992, Jacksonville Teachers Union held a funeral for education. We had flowers, we had music, we had a coffin come through with what was supposed to be school supplies, but it was empty. We brought it up front. We had Governor Childs gave the eulogy. Afterwards, he came up and saw my shirt I made that had a tombstone on it, and it said, "Rest in peace, education, 92. And he said, 92, 93, 94. He knew that once him and Betty Castor left office, vouchers were going to happen. We told you so. Back in the 90s, this was going to happen, and nobody believed us. And the thing that concerns me in both of your presentations, I did it as a former ESC teacher. I didn't hear one word about ESC education. And yes, you're right, we're going to be the ones left in the schools with no supplies, no resources for the kids, and no therapies, nothing for the teachers. So don't forget us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We feel you. I mean, we've only, Support Our Schools only been in the game, if you will, for 5 years. And when we started out, you know, oh, you people, you're just alarmists. You know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. And we've seen it all come to fruition. So thank you for your comment. Shirley?
Is this on?
Did we want to have any comments from our
Hello,
speakers?
can you hear through this?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I think when you're talking about Betty Castor, you might be talking about, you know, those who are new to this area. Betty Castor was our education commissioner, which used to be an elected position in Florida. And I think we need to put that education commissioner back on the ballot and let us elect our legislative representatives to government. But my question goes back to property taxes. It's a big issue right now to cut property taxes, but the largest part of our property taxes is the required local effort that the state says. And there's a funding formula that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, that says so much is going to be the state, the rest is going to be local property taxes. So when people are upset about property taxes, I think you kind of mentioned to them, well, you know, your property taxes are also paying for people going to private schools that aren't accountable. It's also going to home schools. I think that's a good thing to tie into that we'll get touch on for people talking about that now, is those property taxes that we are paying, our property taxes are. And if we wanted to reduce the property taxes, all the state legislature had to do was reduce the amount of the required local effort and put back those state dollars that they're giving to vouchers and they're giving to other things. But they need to fund public education, their share, and reduce the amount in property taxes. Property taxes, there's a lot of people upset about property taxes. And if we can tell them where their property taxes are going, because most people do not know that all of that money is going to private schools and going to, you remember Jeb Bush, 1994, 96, when he first got elected, they tried to say vouchers were for students, poor kids, in failing public schools. And that got thrown out, and now it's for any kid, and they don't even have to attend at any school, let alone a failing school. So, but still people understand, oh, that's for failing schools. That's not it at all. 90% have never been to a public school. And that's what those tax dollars are being paid for. And there's a lot of people upset about tax dollars right now. So tell them where their tax dollars are going for schools.
Before you answer, if I could mention that this was Shirley Brown speaking. She was a state representative for Sarasota for many years, and then a school board member here in Sarasota for what, 15?
And we got Jeb Bush's first bill on vouchers voted down by calling the train.
Right.
Is this on?
No.
Try it now.
The light is on. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, there you go, right into it.
So, first of all, there has been a lot of talk about property taxes and eliminating property taxes. At this point, from what I understand, we don't really have a bill, but most of the bills or all of the bills exempted school taxes because they want to pass this bill to get rid of taxes. And they know it won't pass if they say we're not going to fund schools. So schools at this point are exempted. The second thing is vouchers, and I just want to correct, the cost of vouchers and the cost of homeschooling does affect your property taxes. But your property taxes are designed to only go to your schools because that also is very unpopular. So all of the vouchers are either funded through corporate tax credits, which happen outside of the funding formula, or through the state effort of dollars. And that's how we got to a negative number. Right now, all of the state dollars for these 90-10 districts like ours, all of that is taken up by the state money, which means you're not getting any state money. So really the argument is our schools would have more if we had the amount that the state said it was going to give us. We tax ourselves to what they say we need, but then they give the money, the state money, away to programs other than what we're taxing ourselves for. And so it's not exactly the property tax goes to your schools, but your school's funding is affected by the lack of the state dollars.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy. I had a question. I I had a question about the state constitution, and you showed us that the state constitution requires the state to fund quality public schools. If we had a public school friendly school board, and we had several public school friendly school boards, could they get together and have a class action suit and say that the state is not following the Constitution? But we'd have to have a school board willing to do that. We don't right now.
About 5, it might have been 8 years ago, an organization called Fund Education Now out of Orlando did sue the state for inadequacy, and to say that they were not funding a high quality of public schools. It took a really long time for that lawsuit to go through, and ultimately they used school districts' advertisements about how, you know, we're an A+ school district, we have a graduation rate of this, all the good news out of the schools. They used that against the litigants to say, actually, your own school district says it's doing great. So there is a way. You know, they twice. Since I moved here in 2008, and twice since 2008, getting rid of our, what we call Minnie Blaine Amendment, which says that you can't give tax dollars to religious organizations. I mean, across the country, they're trying to eliminate that distinction. Twice they've tried to get us to change our constitution so it said that you could do that, and it's been voted down both times. But that doesn't stop them. You know, there's still a lot of bites at that elephant.
Yeah, I think that's actually really key. That what Sue just mentioned, the Blaine amendments, they're on the books in
Can you lean the microphone?
they're on the books in virtually every state constitution, and this is this.
Pardon the interruption. We are live streaming. If you don't use a microphone, you will not be recorded. We cannot hear you without a microphone. Please use a microphone.
I'll use hers. I remember this gentleman very well from last year, by the way. Almost all of our constitutions have this strict language saying that public dollars cannot go to sectarian education institutions. And you know, and it's a complicated history, but it's really in our blood. And this is why every time vouchers go up for a public vote, they're defeated overwhelmingly, including in 2024 when voters in Kentucky and Nebraska, even as you know their states became redder than they had ever been, they voted by something like 65-35 against vouchers. They don't like the idea that their tax dollars are going to pay for to sectarian institutions that can discriminate against kids who aren't in that faith. And so on the one hand, as Sue mentioned, we are on this collision course around the country as now more and more states have on the books these big programs. But I think that these are fights that are actually like we need to have them, and they're ones we can win.
Hi, Sue and Jennifer. Thanks for being here. It's Holly Bullard. Sue, I actually have 2 questions because I want to hand off the mic, but I have a question for Sue and then a question for Jennifer. So, Sue, you had mentioned that Monroe and Sarasota, that there's other property-rich districts that we're seeing this effect, right? Where basically not a dollar for Sarasota from the state is going to our public schools at this juncture, like as we speak. It's really mind-boggling, and when you explain that to folks, even press here, they go, what? You know, and so lifting that up and kind of connecting the dots, but I worry about, you know, obviously the future, the projected deficits for the state of Florida that are upcoming, and for public schools to use all of our cards, if you will, like one of the cards that we have as a property-rich district, and I think you've mentioned this before, is sort of the FEFP, this formula that, honestly, this is a bargain that our property-rich districts are benefiting the rest of the state with, right? Monroe County if we were to do the math and to say, wait a second, you know, what does this mean for us? And I've brought that up to a few folks because the FFP is not mandatory, right? It's a participation. It's like we're engaging in this, and at some point you say this isn't worth it anymore, or what does this look like? And we'll just go our own way. I'm not saying that that's, you know, but there's always a card around that in my head. That's my question for you, is sort of like, what, is there an opportunity to kind of lean on banding together with some of our property-rich districts and lean on those to say, wait, like this is not the bargain, and we can actually come to the bargaining table with that chip, if you will.
Yeah, so let me take a second to, if this is too weedy, I want to explain what happened in Monroe. So for since they went to universal vouchers, I have a meeting every year in the summer with my legislator, and I meet with them during the rest of the time too, but I've been showing them how these vouchers are gonna eventually take up the 10% that we've been promised by the state, and each year I would say, oh, look, now it's taking up 65% of that 10%, now it's doing, and soon it's gonna be over. Well, this was the soon year when we got our numbers in the budget for this school year. We were told that we were going to get $1.5 billion, we're not a small district, $1.5 million from the state out of the 6 point something that they provide for our 90%. But funding in Florida is based on kids in the schools, butts in seats. And so when the number of students go down like they did this year, that 90% represents, and the 10% represents a different number. So what I try to say is, like, say we had 10,000 students in our school district, and that would mean that 90% of 10,000, or 10% of 10,000 is 1,000. And the state says, the law says that the state can spend up to 99% of that on vouchers. So that would be $990 they could spend on vouchers, right? Or for 990 students, let's just say. We had a 200 student decline this year. But to make it easier, let's say it was cut in half. Say now we only have 5,000 students, right? So last year they could do 99, how am I doing the numbers? I can't do the numbers anymore. If we dropped in the numbers, so now the total number that we're funded is lower than it was before, and that means the 10% is lower as well. And so we got to a point where there wasn't enough money to fund last year's vouchers in our funding formula, let alone the new vouchers, because 200 immigrant kids left us. And so that is my new argument for the legislature, is that they will protect voucher funding from public school population declines if they put it in a separate categorical. I don't think that necessarily answers your question, but I'll get to you, because I do think we're in a unique situation. So when we got the counts off of the October, they count the students, and we found out we were 200 less, we now owed the state $900,000. So that's 1.5 in the, in the black to minus 900, so it's a $2.4 million shortfall that we saw between the predicted budget and our actual budget. And we're a district of 9,000 students. So that's a huge, huge number for us, and it's not sustainable. So we were assured that we didn't have to pay that back. But so what they did is they changed us all to 80. If the House gets its way, we're all gonna be 85% counting. So now we're only gonna have to pay 85%, and everyone is like, oh, we'll pay less. No, we're gonna pay the same amount, but 15%, like the vouchers are gonna get more, because we're gonna fund our schools and the vouchers are gonna get funded by the other part. And yes, I have had this conversation. In fact, I won't name names of districts, but my chief financial officer I've asked her to get in contact so we are at least messaging the same between these 5 districts that are basically in a hole. But yes, we are in the hole from the vouchers have over. I have talked about this for a long time, that before there were even universal vouchers, it was like all these state requirements, they cost us so much, and that like the amount of state testing that disrupts our schools. When are we in Monroe gonna just, circle the wagons and fund our own school district? I think there would be too much political pushback now from leadership. We would be pariahs. There would be problems with that. To the rest of the county would suffer if we decided to do that with our schools. But it is something that needs to be discussed. And the other thing I'll say is that the funding formula for our schools has been challenged in court and overwhelmingly found to be fair. I used to say equitable, but we're not supposed to say that word now. But it's been a fair funding formula so that a child, regardless of what their needs are and where they live, they are funded at those children are funded fairly throughout the state. The funding formula has never addressed adequacy. And so there's and it doesn't pretend to. So that's where our problem is not that the funding formula, it is the amount of money being put into the funding formula, basically.
So I want to give a shout out to Lisa Schur, but I really, you guys missed an incredible moment that happened when she was on a Tiger Bay panel. She talked, and then she paused and said, oh, and one more thing. On the panel was a man from Step Up Florida. What is it called? Okay, see, I know I'm going to need help from Lisa on this. When she started talking, he started sweating bullets. Literally, and he was squirming in his seat. And I thought, this guy is acting like he's about to get arrested. So I am wondering, can we in Florida hold Step Up for Students accountable in any way? Because they are messing up. Thank you.
That is what the Senate bill meant to do, and what I hear is that bill is probably dead this session, but it's not dead. It's going to be like a zombie bill next year to try to address some of those same issues again. I do like to point out that the Auditor General only looked at how the money moved from the state coffers to Step Up for Students. It did not look at how the money was spent once it was put out towards families. And that is, if you have followed what's Arizona, they, it's like, and I think they've actually also done some stuff here, but it's like $30 million has been spent on Lego. It's like, and I found out this year that not only can you get a Disney pass, but you can get reimbursed for the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, where the little girls go in there and they get the fancy princess dress, and they get the princess hair and makeup. It costs about $400, and they get a tiara and all these things, because it allows the homeschool students are allowed to buy dress-up items. So that is a popular one. In fact, it doesn't cost that much to homeschool. We're giving these people so much money they can't possibly spend it. So they're trying to figure out ways that they can spend all the dollars that they believe they deserve, because those are their education dollars.
And I would just add one more thing to that, because the question that I think it sort of hangs over all of this, whether you're in Florida or one of these other states, is like, well, what's the end goal here? Because what you see in now a bunch of states, it's not just the deficit that looms in the next couple of years, but but that the spending on vouchers is starting to crowd out spending on all kinds of other things. And so in Arizona, it's now so expensive that they're having to cut funds to things like investing in their water systems. Can you imagine anything more important right now in Arizona, where it was, it's 115 degrees and that's considered a cooler day? And there isn't money to invest in upgrades to the water system. And so when you listen to the debates playing out on the floors of legislatures all around the country, including Arkansas this week, you're starting to hear Republicans say, well, what's going to happen, right? You're basically forecasting just an infinite growth in the amount of money we're going to spend on this thing. And so the president of the House and Speaker of the House in Louisiana says, so we're not going to be able to pay for people to repair their roofs after a hurricane anymore, because now it's all just going to go to vouchers? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so I think that question, can we put some heat on these organizations, whether it's like a Step Up for Students or the political groups that are driving all of this stuff? The bigger and more expensive these programs get, the harder it is to answer the question what the end goal is, and the less sense it makes to ordinary people who are paying for it.
Right, and it's not their child's money. We fund public education, we crowdsource it. And as high as your taxes are for public schools, rarely do they even match the amount of per pupil spending for one child in your district for 1 year. I live in I'm homesteaded, so I'm a little bit protected, but I live in a waterfront house in the Keys, and I recently did the calculation of how many years with the current taxes that I pay to schools, I would have to pay those taxes to pay for my 2 children who spent 13 years in public schools, and it was over 100 years. So you can look at and that's because you pay taxes for your neighbor even though you don't have kids in schools anymore, and you do it. And so will forever be paying for my kids' public schools because I never paid for it in the first place, and a lot of, anyway, there are probably some people who live in a house that's big enough and the taxes are high enough to pay for a kid's funding for a year. But most of us, that's not true. We pay for each other's children. It's what a collective public good is.
Daniela?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Daniela, and I have to write this down because my brain has like 30 tabs open all the time. So I'm here as a mom, but also as a representative of El Pueblo Unido. And I want to thank you, wonderful ladies, first of all, for creating spaces like this to keep us informed and educated on what's going on. Thank you. My question is, how do we build a bridge that truly connects and includes the Hispanic community in spaces like this? Because in almost every immigrant family, there's at least one U.S. citizen who's eligible to vote. However, if those families are not actively invited, included, and represented, how do we expect them to show up, stay informed, and participate in the voting process? That has me really worried. Like, I know U.S. citizens who have no clue, who are Hispanic, and they have no clue that this is happening in August. So I'm like actively trying to get them involved. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. What concrete steps can we take to ensure that our community feels welcome, informed, and empowered to engage and get out there and vote?
If someone in Florida had that answer, we wouldn't be where we are right now. He took it. I have just, our schools are really majority Hispanic, and I think that families, but it doesn't matter if you look around, there's not that many moms here. There's grandmas and grandpas here. So I think the messaging what I would call the other side has really great endless messaging. And the narrative in national media is that we've spent so much money on these schools already, they're terrible. You know, look how bad they are. So I don't know how to engage people whose children who are in school to understand, because I think most families think their school is doing pretty good. So they don't see that there's a threat to their school. And that is why I put, the instability has to be messaged by people, well, this isn't because the schools misuse their money. This is because of 20 years of underfunding. And so when there is a crisis like the declining enrollment across the state, for whatever reason, birth rate, affordability, definitely immigration rules, we don't have enough flexibility in our budgets anymore to be able to ride that out. We are all cut bare to the bone, and we have to be real careful about how we message these next years going forward. And we need to, when you hear people talk about it, I mean, it's a really good question. I think we try to get it through our schools, but really, in my district, unlike Sarasota, my district is, the school board doesn't make headlines. Nobody, we don't have people who, well, we do. I should have brought my phone up. I'm the one, apparently, that is the problem. I have infected my whole district with some kind of woke something or other. So I'm targeted. But we don't have conflicts at our school board. I am trying, and I have a new superintendent, and I'm working with the CFO. The school districts need to be messaging clearly that, we're not at the point anymore where it's like, if you just made your schools better, people would come back, because these are not people who ever left. These are people who were never planning on going to school and likely moved to Florida so they could get the money, many of them. So let's talk afterwards let's brainstorm some ideas together, because if I had that answer, I'd like to have that answer.
Okay, I think we're running short on time, so maybe just 2 more questions. Debbie?
Debbie Blackwell, retired teacher after 2 million years of public education teaching. Some of this really gets to me, but one of the things, this attack on public education is very intentional and multifaceted. And you're talking about the attack on Glade and Union counties. I'm wondering, who's the population there? Who is being targeted? Because I'm sure it's intentional.
Well, I don't know. I haven't actually seen exactly how both districts are, how Glade is messaging it. I know that Union County has specifically been messaging about, they've been showing how much money is going to vouchers, how much is going, the attack on them is because they're poor districts and they don't have a half-cent sales tax, and even if they had a voter-approved millage, it wouldn't raise very much money, and most of the bigger districts have come to their voters, and tax referendums are overwhelmingly positive. People really want, when Shirley talks about property taxes, people are upset about property taxes, but they vote to tax themselves for public education. So I think the attack is more general, to be honest. I think Glade and Union got caught up in the defunding quicker than the rest of us. But I was at a meeting with the CFO of a very large school district about 18 months ago. And he had been asked by the appropriations committee staff, those are the guys who've been around for a long time and they really know, and they said, if we continue doing this, how long can you survive? And he thought 2 years maybe. So this is a giant one of the largest school districts in the country that isn't sure how they're going to financially survive. And school districts, especially in Glades and Union, are often the largest employer. They are the child care place for all the children. They, they generate, they are loved by their communities, and to lose a school district or have the state take over in some way is devastating to communities. And having an opportunity to get a voucher where you might get to go to a private school is not the answer that families are going to want.
Last question. Jill?
Thank you. Jill Lewis-Spector, Sarasota resident. First of all, I want to thank both of you for being here. I read your work, and I'm so impressed with it. It means a lot to have you here today. I do want to mention that at a Tiger Bay meeting, we had several representatives come, and I asked a question about Senate Bill 318, whether any of the provisions might end up in some of the budget information. What I was told was so interesting, because they said they seemed amenable to having students' IDs consistent. It seems that Step Up for Student has one set of numbers for students as their IDs, and the state has another number, which is why the tracking was so difficult. So we may see that in the budget, provisions that are provided in the end. I do have a question. And it gets in the weeds a little bit. Sarasota has a very rich art heritage and program for not only students in schools, but also for the residents. And I'm wondering, you're looking at different counties in the state, whether you see the cutbacks affecting the arts programs in the schools to a greater extent than some of the other programs. For instance, the sports programs, are they being cut to the same extent that the arts programs are being cut? And if so, what are the arts teachers doing to advocate for their programs? Because we need that here.
Can we keep it a little bit short?
No, I'm not capable
No,
of that.
no, it has to be long.
The concern is twofold. I think that the more you rate your schools on standardized testing, the more the schools are going to focus on the thing that you're rating them on. So we don't have an arts exam, and kids are not. Those are things that local communities need to pressure their schools to continue to do arts. Lots of times that's what those half-cent sales taxes are for, specifically to keep arts in the school. Now, our district, we have art in our schools, but we also rely on our art community for partnerships, and they're getting hit very hard by this DOJ property tax thing. And so that's like the other side of it. The whole community serves public schools, and when you start cutting these programs, that becomes a problem. And then your very first, what were you talking about at the first? What was your first comment about?
About the ID numbers.
Oh, yeah. So the ID numbers are not going to fix the structural issues. I mean, they're going to make things easier, but I was told by the staff on the Senate Education Appropriations Committee that the plan with their bill is to pay out the first voucher quarter on August 1st. And he could see families applying for the voucher, and there's no law that says you can't apply for the voucher the next year as well, even if you return to public school. So he saw the chance that the student would apply for the voucher and get their money in the first quarter, and in October they would be determined to be with this number in public schools. Like, apply for the voucher, buy a bunch of stuff, and then enroll your child in public school. And then they would be found at the end of that quarter to not be using the voucher, and there's no mechanism to take the money back if they were there. So now he thought that in the future, everyone would be doing that, and we would be funded on 3/4 of the year, because once families found out that at the start of the year, Christmas in July, right, they could buy all their presents for the year, and they might be able to buy their year of Wi-Fi and a TV and a bicycle and those things, and then put their kids into public school. They wouldn't even have to miss a day of public school, because once they register for that first quarter as a voucher student, they get the money for the first quarter. So we might be able to identify that that's happening quicker and better, but I'm not sure we're going to need a lot more safeguards than that to protect the funding.
Thank you very much. Can we have another round of applause for Sue and Jennifer? We're going to start with our next panel. Whoever has the extra microphone out there that goes, no, that won't work there. That's going to close. Yeah. Can I have my panel come forward?
The parent panel, please. And while the parent panel is assembling, I'm Carol Lerner. I'm one of the directors, along with Lisa, of Support Our Schools. So it's so great to be here with all of you. I also want to say a few words of thanks to UU Sarasota. This is such a great facility for an event like this. They opened their doors, they opened their hearts to us. They have childcare on a very high level, and that's also very reflective of the type of childcare, of religious education that they do here. I am a member of UU Sarasota, so I know it well, and I know the quality of everything they do here. So could we have a round of applause for UU? And secondly, there is a tradition within the UU when an organization uses their facilities pretty much free of charge, is to pass the hat. So we're going to be passing a basket, so if people don't mind chipping in a little bit. Is Lisa still here? I know Lisa was going to do it. If not, could maybe Deb? Thank you. And where is our parent panel? Come on up. So I just learned that one of our panelists, we had expected to have 3 present, but one unfortunately is ill with a fever, so could not make it. But we have 2 great Sarasota moms here who have emerged as leaders of the effort that we're doing to not only save our schools and support our schools, but to make them even better in the end. That's really our main objective in the end. I just want to say a few words. I've been in this business really my entire life, advocating for education and other just general welfare benefits for everybody. But I've been doing this for about 10 years in Sarasota, and I started out forming an organization called Protect Our Public Schools. We called it POPS, and that has since merged in with Support Our Schools. But when I was doing this way back 10 years ago, and even like 5 years ago, we tried to get parents involved. It was mainly retired educators like myself at the time, and we really had a hard time. But then there was one round where parents did stand up, and that was during the pandemic, when all the craziness started here in Sarasota. And for those in the audience who don't know this, Sarasota was basically the point of the epicenter. Our state was where all the craziness was going on, the anti-woke, the anti-CRT, the anti-masks. Sarasota was pretty much the center of that. We were in newspapers all over, not only the country, but all over the world in it. And I'm not kidding about that, because we had people like Bridget Ziegler here. We had the Proud Boys in action. We had General Flynn in action, all trying to destroy our schools. Then some brave parents stood up, and that one of them was Lisa, who's been talking to you today. So that's when I and other people that were in this POPS organization joined with the parents. But even then, we were still having struggle recruiting more parents. But then we had another crisis. We had a crisis where there was fear, not only fear, but seemed like the reality of schools closing down, including one elementary school, Wilkinson. And guess what the parents said? The parents said no. And we have two parents here today who will be telling that story, but I believe we're starting with Holly, if I'm correct, and will be giving us a broader message of what's going on in Sarasota. And then Jody Osceola will be talking about what actually happened with the start of a whole new organization here in Sarasota. If you could both introduce yourself for just a minute as you speak, and I believe the order, Holly, you're first, am I correct on that?
I can always go in anymore. Can I ask really quick, what's the best practice with the mics so that we don't get interference, if that's okay? Do you know?
With the lights?
With the mics.
Oh, with the mics.
The correct thing is get as close to the microphone as you can.
Okay.
Rock and roll singer.
All right. Wow.
And some of the mics were better than others, I think.
Okay. All right. Don't want to distract. So yeah, I can kind of ping off a little bit. So first of all, I'm Holly Bullard. I am a mom here in Sarasota. Our kiddos go to Wilkinson Elementary, and actually, my son is actually over there in the other room. Thank you all so much for taking care of him. He's in kindergarten at Wilkinson, and basically, so that's my mom, and really our public schools in Sarasota, in Wilkinson in particular, and just is such a stable component of my life. And so this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to engage as well on the parent front. I wanted to kind of ping off of, okay. Interference always bugs me a lot with mics. Okay, sorry. Ugh.
There is a feedback.
Yeah.
There's a feedback reverberation thing that's a little. Just get closer to the mic and have less feedback.
Okay. All right. Yeah? Okay.
You just take it off.
I'm gonna.
Maybe. There you go.
Okay. So, all right.
This may be appropriate when we tell people who are speaking, use your teacher's voice.
Okay. Use my or my mom voice in this case, right? We're gonna use our mama bear. I know. This is what came out here. Okay, so I'm Holly. I also, just it happened in my day job, I work for Florida Policy Institute. I am a nerd in my day job, and education policy is actually my background, and so that kind of is what I brought to the fore in what Jody and I will talk about a little bit today. But I wanted to ping off of what Sue was sharing about, our school district. Just big picture, we're in a very similar space as Monroe in terms of having this impact of those, three kind of whammies of, yes, reduced birth rate, but not that much. When you actually look at the rate over time and how our actual students in Sarasota, it's not that different than over time. Sarasota County, we actually have the benefit of having our per pupil compared to our population is actually very low, and that's just demographically, we always have a low birth rate in Sarasota because of our age demographic. So you have our age demographic in Sarasota, which actually kind of benefits our schools, because that just means more per pupil support, and the fact that we are one of these property-rich districts, that we are one of the 5 when you look at the budget that has that impact of what Sue was talking about. So you have this long-time benefit and long-time support in Sarasota County of our school referenda. Very few people know that in 2024 November election, our school referenda actually performed better than any politician and any other question in the entire state of Florida. I mean, yes, right? So for our public schools, and it is a full mill, y'all. Like that, like when you're in property tax, when they're, property tax, 84% of Sarasota voters in a general election, they thought they were being cute by moving it to the general too, right? Because we had it in March. They thought they were cute by going, let's see if they can pass, if whenever all the people go, let's see if they all support. Man, like, look, that is such a point of pride in our community, and something that, like, to piggyback off of the last conversation, parents, and there is an untapped resource in our communities from our parents, okay? From the parents of public school parents and families and guardians, people who care for them. At some point, we have private schoolers in Sarasota and in Florida. We have homeschool folks, but just the numbers are just still dramatically choosing public school, okay? Like even in Sarasota, for many years now, so 2023, we had universal vouchers where anyone could choose and say, okay, well, I'm gonna choose a voucher. Every single person that has a child that could choose that. Well, guess what? Like 80% more still choose public schools. So we have had that choice in the vast majority. The parents still have chosen, and I think it's really important for us to think of that, of like, what about these families who are still choosing our public schools even though they have this other choice, right? How do we engage them? I mean, yes, so raise your hand if you're a parent of a public schooler currently, right now. Okay, there's some of us in here, awesome. Okay, but just think about the power of that is a bit latent, and the fact that our legislature and our governor are listening to a much smaller pot of folks, of parents, right? And to say, well, your Disney tickets and your bibbidi, I didn't even know that, Sue, but bibbidi bobbidi boo. Jennifer, can we have that on your podcast, please? I mean, but the fact that they're doing that and cutting, and we have to cut teachers in Sarasota, that they're closing schools across the state, that they're taking over rural schools, if we can communicate and reach parents who are very busy, hence we're not here, hence we have to figure out childcare, but we overwhelmingly, there's 5-to-1 parents who choose public schools in Florida to this day, even though we have universal choice. So it is a lie that like our public schools are not what our families want. So that's one thing, just a message that we want to bring is like thinking parent first, and because it's also very effective to have public school parents there, like, because you can't say that is not impacting us, and like how we can kind of corral together all together. So that's just something to say, is that even though the voucher program in Florida, if it were a school district, and it should be, like I think it should be its own line item, its own piece. Many of us have said that for a long time, to give it sunlight. That's what they don't want. That's so funny. He's like, it's gonna ruin our voucher program. It's gonna go away. It would only go away because people could see what was happening. So if you put sunlight on it, and you go, oh wow. Yes, there's over 500,000 voucher kids in Florida. If that was its own school district, it would be the largest school district in Florida by far, and the second largest school district in the nation, okay? And what the legislature did in 2023, it said, let's basically create a whole new school district, which would be the largest in the state, but kind of give a little bit more money to do it, but not really, and you're gonna kind of cannibalize your own money for your schools. That's what happened, and because they have this lie of money following the student and stuff, and they can kind of wave a magic wand or like kind of hide it in the school formulas. But what we have to do is really talk just frankly to folks to say, no, they created a whole new school system, and they're trying to fund two school systems with basically the amount for one, and that's where we are today. So anyways, just to kind of piggyback to where we are in Sarasota of having to have this big, we've had this big process and everything. So, but that's also where I met Jody at Wilkinson Elementary. Please, we have a little bit more in our afternoon session on parents, so I don't want to get too much into that. But in terms of Sarasota, yes, we are at a place of like an inflection point, but our community is very strong, and I also feel strongly that Sarasota, we can lead not only in Sarasota, but what can happen here is to say, look, even in a very quote-unquote red area, 84% of people voted to tax themselves $300 a pop a year for our public schools. We love our like we're proud of our schools. So how do we kind of selfishly, because I do care about all of Florida and all of Florida's kids, because DeSoto County has the lowest per capita income in the whole state, okay? And so DeSoto County, who they don't have the property tax that we have to support their kids. So how can we also kind of lead as our love for our public schools should kind of extend, you know, and how can we kind of talk to parents across the state? So, so Jody, I wanted to ask if we can have a talk show here, but it's
Let's
okay.
do it.
We've been, one thing that I've noted that has struck me, because I'm mostly like a nerd behind my computer. I have a day job that I am home, but engaging when something happens to your school, and it does kind of draw out that. Can you share a little bit about like your background of like how did you start to get involved and hear about, and like what was your like journey a little bit around engagement as a parent?
Well, my journey in Sarasota County starts way back in 1989 when I moved here and was a student here in Sarasota County. Megan's family and mine have grown up together since the 80s, and you know, we went to elementary school together in private school, and then we moved to public school, and public school is where I came into my own. I'm a Booker High student. I went to Booker Middle. I have lived in Sarasota County for too long, but it's great. I have gotten an amazing education here. I've gotten such an introduction to the arts. It led me to future careers where I was able to be the start and be the first postpartum doula in Sarasota County. I was a nurse. I traveled and then got into music and stuck to my musical theater roots, which I started at VPA and going to Sarasota Opera House and, you know, Jewish Federation for camp. We've been here. I'm the oldest of 4, so we've been here for a while. When I left and traveled and had my life and my career, I met my husband down in Miami. And he's a Native American. He's part of the Miccosukee tribe. And we had to decide whether we were going to raise our family and our children in Miami or in Sarasota. I came home. I'm mom. I came home. This is where I want to raise my kids. I want my kids to have the experience that I did. I'm also a mom that started late in life, and my last one, our kids are COVID babies. Sage my youngest was the last one born before Code Black in Sarasota Memorial, and that was an experience in itself. But I also had a special needs 4-year-old at home that was just starting VPK, and a 1.5-year-old. So mom life in Sarasota, we lead into school. I'm just starting my advocacy journey by falling down this rabbit hole. I started advocating for my kids. I found out in VPK with special needs children here in town that even though we have amazing charter schools and private schools, they don't need to provide my children with the help that they need for their specific learning. So we went to public education, and my children thrived. I tried homeschool. I have nothing against homeschool. I have nothing against private school. My nieces and nephews do both. I have 13 nieces and nephews in Sarasota and Manatee County. It's a big family here. But that leads me to say we moved from our home and chose our area and our location to buy our house because it was walking distance to school. Because we had special needs children. My son was an eloper, so I wanted to make sure if he was gonna elope, he was gonna run home, and the school was close enough to the home I bought that he would come home, because that's where we were when we started our public school journey. And in doing so, I was able to learn how to regulate my kids, how to teach my children, because I'm not a teacher. I tried homeschool, but with special needs, they learn differently. Everyone learns differently. Every child learns differently. And that I saw my kids thrive. I joined the SAC committee. I got really involved in school, and I volunteered there. I go to lunch all the time. I'm an involved parent. I'm probably an overly involved parent. But we experienced budget cuts that year. And Rain's behavioral coach, I shouldn't be using my son's name, but you know, his behavioral coach was cut. So what did I do? I was like, okay, well, we can't fix this on SAC. Where's the next step? Go to the school board. All right, so I start going to school board meetings and I start speaking up, and I go by myself. And as a parent, the first time you go by yourself to speak at the school board, especially, you guys have been there and doing this for years, and you're great at doing it, and there's so much energy, but when you're a scared parent, that first time you walk in there, the shakes, the fear, you have to advocate for yourself, you have to advocate for your children. You know this is what you need, you know this is what you're supposed to get, and this is supposed to be where you go to ask the people to listen, because they're in control of this. You're supposed to be working as a team for your children, everyone's children at school, in your community. So that's how I got into advocating for my kids.
And yes, and then we are upon a journey. So I wanted to lift something and ask, because we haven't talked too much about kids with disabilities yet. And I think from a 30,000-foot view, or big stepping back, you often see that as a message as well. So over the last 30 years or so, in Florida especially, but in other states, they basically say, hey, public schools are not serving your kid with disabilities to what they should be, so here's your voucher to go to do X, Y, Z. That's actually how they started vouchers in Florida, and then they kind of, they were even on record and secretly saying, oh yeah, that was always our plan, was to start there, and then you get to where we are now, which is like everybody gets a voucher. But if they hooked onto a point of truth, which is that we're not investing enough in kids with disabilities. It also speaks to this sort of double-edged sword for parents of kids with special needs, where you support your public school and you want it to be better, but then you also need to hold it, you need to be an advocate.
You have
for
to
your
hold
child.
them accountable.
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about that line that you're walking?
Yeah, it's an interesting line. Our other panel member, Leandra, is an amazing advocate. She actually came with me to an IEP meeting yesterday. As much as I've gotten into it, I still need to go to a meeting and be the mom and have someone there that has talked to me ahead of time, who knows the lingo, who's professional about it, because let's face it, I'm not. But that you need that extra help and that extra support, someone there who's done this before. This is the first time I'm going through the IEP process, but I have it for multiple kids. So with an advocate, you're able to know what you're walking into and know that you have that support in that meeting. And that's where you can get those extra accommodations so that your child is taught properly. Your child has a different way of learning. They find their strengths, they find their weaknesses, and they pinpoint them so that they can excel. And that's the goal for all of our kids in education. We want them to have a love of learning where they feel empowered to excel. So they can go on and be exactly who they're created to be. So how do we do that? We work with the teachers. The IEP meeting is where you meet with your ESE liaison, your exceptional student liaison. And they're the ones who talk to the teachers. They look at the behavior, they look at habits and different health things, and they talk to parents, and it's an amazing team process. And I've found in our experience over the past year, when we work as a team with the school, and then we work as a team with the district, we come up with these solutions that are out of the box thinking that aren't always traditional means, but they get us to the end result that we need to go. And if we didn't work as a team to do that, and we didn't involve each other and community, we wouldn't make the progress that we did. So we have to stay community oriented. And that's kind of how we saved Wilkinson, in essence.
And that's that is a pitch for our afternoon. We have a little bit more around that in the afternoon. But one thing that popped up in our work around Wilkinson and engaging, because then basically with Wilkinson, the district said, oh, well, the schools of hope threat basically mean that we have to close your school, in a nutshell. Okay, this policy around schools of hope, that's a whole nother journey, but just to know, what's happening and how do we start to connect with parents at our school, and then also other parents for other schools that they go, is this gonna happen to us? That we got these letters about different schools, and then, layoffs of people, et cetera. So connecting with other parents was a big part, right?
Yeah, from the rumors, getting a phone call from a mom, hey, I heard from one of my family members that they're going to be closing your school and the Landings is going to be moving into it. Do you know anything? You talk to everybody, so what do you know? I call to get confirmation. Can't get any questions, ask the principal. We have no clue. Go to the In Touch meeting. All the board members are there. Superintendent Connor's there. We've never heard anything, but we'll get back to you at the workshop. Well, they were prepared. All the moms got together. It took one text, talking to another person, having the conversations, building the community, person to person, individual to individual, and being like, hey, this is our school. We can't go to another school. You live across the street from me. You live across the street the other way. We're going to get sent to 3 different schools. Because the schools of hope want to come in, sell off to developers who are funding the schools of hope, and make it more convenient to school board members. Our kids don't matter. The fact that I bought my house there for that purpose, for that school, and I'm working hard to make sure that school provides my kids the appropriate education and helps all of our kids, because it's an amazing school. We're the only nationally certified STEAM school in Florida. We have an amazing property. We have amazing programs. I get to go and read with my kids every week. I can volunteer. I can go on field trips. The teachers care about the children, and they want to make them succeed, and they work as a team. And it all comes back to being a team and being a community and working together.
And so one of the things that Jody and I had really recognized over time as well is the sort of this lack of this organized voice for parents in Sarasota. And so I'm going to put them on. So can Florida PTA raise your hand really quick? Okay. So they've traveled here to Sarasota. They're not from Sarasota. So they travel because we don't have a PTA council in Sarasota. There are many PTA councils in other parts of the state. And why do we bring that up is that this voice for parents and families of public schools, we support and love our public schools, but we also need to hold we need a voice to actually go to the district and say, but what about this? What about the fact that Wilkinson is a Title I school and y'all want to close this, but we need to talk about that, or like we need to have this voice that can have a fair component and a fair seat at the table, if you will, right?
Well, it's like conversations I've been having with the superintendent and other board members about how to keep parent involvement and engagement happening. And they're the ones who suggested we form a PTA, a PTO, so that we can, we can get together, we can talk, because we are effective when we are solution-based and we work together with both the district and the legislature. And when we work together as moms for our kids and dads, I mean, it's the fun part of getting together in the park and having pizza and figuring out what we're gonna do. But you know you're not alone. You know you're sharing the struggle. You know you're all going through different things, but you're fighting for a similar goal, a same cause. And that we have to do that all over the country just to fight for public education and resources. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head. When you don't get the services, it gets frustrating. And unless you have the money for an advocate or a lawyer or are super connected where people are like, oh, we want to help because they're out there. There are advocacy groups and there are people who have been doing this, but until the parents know and we figure out how to branch out and tell everybody, some of you have been doing this a lot longer than we have. So we're looking for advice, but we know what worked for us and that's what we're gonna share later.
So I'll end with this, that also Jody and I can get together and talk for hours. So this is perfectly fun. So you can, this is basically us in the park. But thinking about that, about this untapped resource, and this was our message to the district when we were like showing up in lots of spaces to say, you know, it's not just that we are angry parents out there. Like that, the time when public schools could just say, parents are kind of an annoyance sometimes or whatever, like that is way gone. We need to engage and pull them in a way where other parents, I mean, actually meeting and connecting with parents that are in, for example, who are districted to Wilkinson, who might not know about it, but now they know that there's parents who care a lot about that. That is really important for your school, like that as a culture, as a parent to say, oh, I kind of want to be at a school where the other parents care about their school. Like having that visibility is actually really important to what Sue was talking about, butts in seats. Our superintendent says this, cheeks in seats. Cheeks in seats. Cheeks in seats. Well, you got to get, who's choosing to take their kindergartner there? Who's like, I could homeschool. You're competing with 10 grand for homeschooling versus, gee, Jody seems like a really cool person who I want to be in community with. All right, so you're kind of selling community too, and we need to think, we need a market, but we want a partner. So how can we be more of a co-equal branch, if you will, and especially in Sarasota. In other districts, they have PTA councils. They have more where it's like we're showing up more consistently. And so rather than just having this like a bit of a vacuum where we have a Moms for Liberty piece that have stepped in, which is just astroturfing. Okay, there's no Moms for Liberty folks at Wilkinson, by the way. Nobody. We have varying political backgrounds. We have varying backgrounds by race in this mom group. Some are like, oh, homeschooling or whatever, but just this interest of our school is what brought us together. Right?
Well, that's kind of what started SRQ Parents United, is all of the parents meeting at the gate, taking care of our kids, fighting for our school, staying in contact, texting each other, WhatsApp, Facebook, what can we do? Let's go to the park, let the kids play, let's plan. And that's where it came from. We're not trying to change things and be hateful or start anything. We want to protect our kids and our public schools and their needs and our community. So, that's where SRQ Parents United came from. If you'd like more information, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and it's really simple at srqparentsunited@gmail.com. There are a bunch of other moms that are involved in this, and they all live around the neighborhood. It starts on our front porch. It starts on my front porch. Everybody would come over in the morning after drop off and have coffee and, just sit there and talk about what can we do. And we would have 5 moms in lawn chairs on the front porch till pickup time, making posters, making flyers, and then we went over to the park. And gratefully, Carol and Lisa helped us when we wanted to make stuff, and we'll talk more about that. But
yeah, but just to know that, like how do we engage parents? Like there are parents who care. We outnumber other folks 5 to 1. There are parents and families who choose public schools, even now when there's a totally different, even in Sarasota, right? So in quote unquote red, this is not partisan, this isn't at all. And you saw that with our mom group, that these were moms who were like, politics, the stuff at the school board has kind of scared me, but I am willing to step up now to engage because this is about my kid and my school. So this is like, is there a way for us to reach and to expand there? And so I think all of us together can commit and think about that as well. And more to come, but let's pitch to questions or what have you, and then
we're
keep
gonna
the day
have,
rolling.
Damaris Allen is going to join, and she's actually going to facilitate the Q&A. I've known Damaris as an advocate. She's probably the most well-known and effective parent advocate in the state of Florida. She started as a parent, just like what Jody's describing, and probably had those front porch or kitchen table type discussions that then became very active in the PTA, just as the parents are talking about. And now she's the executive director of Families for Strong Public Schools. So, take it away.
Is the blue one on?
No, it's on.
There you go.
No, my question was, is Shelley up here? I thought Shelley was.
Shelley.
Shelley,
come
Speaking
on
of
up. Come
PTA,
on,
wait,
Shelley.
as Shelley's coming up, everyone stand up and stretch. Do a little dance. Take a little break. And then have a seat. And as it's true, we did appetizers and wine, but that's exactly how we started. I like to say I'm an accidental advocate.
I fell down a rabbit hole.
Yes. It's really easy to do, and PTA caught me. And so I was about to go into a Alice in Wonderland thing.
Yeah, had our tea party.
Yeah, totally. So we're going to take questions from the audience, but first, Shelley, can you introduce yourself since you're brand new on the panel?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Shelley Pedraza. I'm actually the Vice President of Regions and Councils for Florida PTA. So my role is actually to support all of the county councils that Holly was mentioning. I support all of the county councils. We have 14 county councils that work with the district to make sure that we're able to change those policies that are hurting our schools. And then we have a lot of units. So we do actually have 2 units here in Sarasota, which is awesome, and we want to get more, because the whole point of PTA is to advocate. We are the largest and oldest advocacy organization for children.
And can you tell us the difference between PTO and PTA? Because this is important.
Yes, so with PTOs are a parent group that are specifically at the school. Their main purpose is not advocacy. They do not have the same mission of making sure that we are looking at all of the kids. Many of our PTOs tend to concentrate on providing maybe financial stuff that maybe the principal may want. We're not a fan of that. Because the whole point of PTA is to make sure that you're covering all of the kids, right? Every single one of the kids that walks through that school should be supported and have what they need to learn. One of the other major parts that are PTO versus PTA is that you have different levels. So for example, the PTO, it's specifically that school. With PTA, you have the PTA at that school. You have the county council that oversees all of the units there and provides training, support, making sure that they have everything that they need, because we are 501c3s. And then you have the state, and then you're also part of national. So it is a national association, and we all interrelate, and we work with each other and provide resources and all types of programs that really support all of our kids.
And PTA, both on a state level and a national level, both have legislative committees. In Florida, they are always in Tallahassee during session and interim committee weeks. And nationally, we also do advocacy as well, and all of those things. And so that's also an important piece, is you always have a voice representing you. I'm on National PTA's legislative committee. All right, so questions. Because you can.
So, at the beginning, this morning, we heard that there was very powerful marketing for the voucher program. Very powerful. I'm sure it was very simple. It had very clear messaging. What has the PTA done, or anyone else, with very clear, simple messaging to counteract that messaging?
I mean, the district is starting to put out new messages, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think that, so first of all, like PTA and or other organizations like nonprofits, all of us needing to lean on the district to say, and they're starting to. So if I could just use Sarasota as a microcosm versus the other districts. So to say, as you like, they're starting to understand of that, needing to invest in marketing and hopefully leaning on parents or other groups to think outside of the box to say, we're going to actually have to market and be more savvy. I'd say that when in the news, when Wilkinson was...
They actually have, sorry, here, let's just start here. They actually have a new campaign coming out. The district has started, since the Wilkinson project, they've started highly marketing our district as a competitive school district, a destination district, if you will, because of the ideas that the parents and the solutions that we as a team came up with.
Which is all new, right? Like public schools never had this like chief marketing officers or really having to be savvy and to compete. But when Wilkinson was in the news that it was going to close, now there's too many of them. That's what's going on.
I'll just scoot this way.
No, we got mailers direct, right, that said, your school is closing, come to community day school where we care about you, okay? So the idea that we can always operate as public schools as they always have been is just wrong, but incorporating parents into that. So the moms who have been, like, we have moms at Wilkinson who went to Wilkinson as a kid, and getting them as a video, like, well, this is Wilkinson, we're the only certified STEM school. We're in Title I, the only certified STEM school in the whole state. Hello, like, why isn't that more engaged in the, because we've never had to do it before. So it's asking the public school, but that's something that the districts, we need to partner to pressure them. It's not like nonprofits to do it for them, right? Like I think that would be, we could support them, but we need to engage and say, we need to think a little bit differently.
So with Florida PTA specifically, we go to Tallahassee. As soon as those bills are out there, we are communicating with our constituents, because we're a membership association. So each one of our local units have members. Our councils are supporting them. So we as Florida PTA are able to communicate with them and say, hey, this is an issue. This is a bill that's coming out. You guys need to be active and supporting, whether we're supporting a bill or against a bill or whatever the case is. And we actually do, like Damaris said, we go to Tallahassee, we meet with the legislators. We explain to them, not just, hey, we don't like this bill, right? The idea is to really explain to them how it's hurting our schools, how it's hurting our kids and our families. So we do advocate a lot when it comes to legislative stuff. And then just in general, our PTA, our county councils, partner very closely with the districts. So when things are happening, when things are going sideways, because they do, one of the things that they have those conversations, sometimes on the back end. You may not always see all the conversations that we have with the school districts when it comes to the county councils, but they are talking together in the back end, like thinking like, okay, what can we do to support you? Because sometimes the schools can't say something. Sometimes the school boards can't say something. But we as families, as parents, as grandparents, as community members can 100% say something.
And one more thing, one of the things I want to highlight is the message is getting out. So one of the weird things that I did was spreadsheet every single comment to Treasury that was made over the federal tax credit voucher. And consistently, those who were against vouchers had a consistent message. This harms our public schools. We want to invest in public schools. There's waste, there's fraud, there's abuse. It leaves students with disabilities out, ability to discriminate. Those across the board were consistent. And so that is a very clear indicator that our messaging across the states even is becoming more consistent, more streamlined, and it's getting to everyone.
I think it's great that you brought up the difference between a PTO and a PTA, and I think the Sarasota parents and and voters are understanding now it's just not talking to the school board. We need to be advocating at the state and federal level. So perhaps you can tell us maybe how we can switch some of our schools from being the PTO, which is just focused on raising money, to becoming PTAs, which will advocate at the state and national level, well, even the local level, for the public schools.
Can I just jump in and say that even without a PTA, parental and local engagement and local people going and doing just that, making the phone call yourself, giving your friend the phone number to call, the email to send, you can do, I mean, we're all for going towards PTA, but it took going one-on-one. This is what you do. I just learned this. Let me tell you how we can do it. Share that every parent can make a phone call to their person. You can actually meet them. They're the same as you and I, especially when they come to legislative, and they're here in town. We as moms can't go to Tallahassee all the time. You guys can when the kids get older, but with kindergartners, we can't go to Tallahassee all the time. But we can go to the delegation, we can go to school boards, we can meet with them in their office, we can have Zoom meetings with them, and we did all that.
Yeah.
So to have the power to do that and share that.
Yeah, and I think that's where the benefit of PTA comes in, is because we take all of those parents, the families, the communities, and we put them all together so that we're all on the same page and we have that messaging, right? So that the PTAs can share that information to anyone that's a member in whatever school they're at, where everyone understands, oh, this is a bill that's coming out, and hey, we need you to contact your legislator, whether that's a phone call, an email. We 100% recognize that not everyone can go to Tallahassee. Right? I went for a very short amount of time because I do have a child at home too. So, and he's special needs. So it's one of those things where anyone can be an advocate. It might look different for everybody. And at the next portion, I think, is when we are going to talk about how to start PTAs in your schools, where we'll break it down and really talk about what that looks like. And PTA is not just for parents, it's not just for moms. We have dads, we have grandparents, we have community members. Some of our biggest advocates are people that may not even have kids at the school, because you care about the children. So it's super important to make sure that we work on that, and we will definitely discuss it.
Hi guys. As a school board candidate, I'm just trying to figure out how to integrate this. I absolutely believe that we need to capture the power that the parents have, and I commend you ladies because you absolutely did that and made a big difference. So I did try to reach out to some of our school community through booster clubs and things like that, but what I find is that to some degree they're very much controlled by their school and their school admin. Yeah. So in terms of my expectation is that school board members should be ambassadors, they should be going to these things, they should be integrating. I hate to see the idea that we're gonna have to spend more money from the school district to market our schools when we have a sea of parents who love their schools that we can offer and ask them to help us with that. So I guess I'm asking, as far as the school board interactions with the PTA, what does that look like? How can the school board help to bring ideas or leverage, or can they, or are these two separate organizations have to stay separate?
No, 100%. So I love these questions. I'm a huge PTA nerd. So one of the big things that we do, so in some of our strong county councils, right, that they have a county council that's helping all of our PTAs and that are in all the different schools. The councils, 100%, and the units to some extent, they do have interaction with the school board. They will reach out to them and say, hey, this is going on. Is there something that you can help us with? You know, whatever the case is. But our county councils have been, I'll give myself as an example. When I was county council president, I won't disclose the county, but when I was county council president, we had things that came up, you know, like the different things that are happening at the schools or policies that maybe need to be changed because they're not, they're not as effective as they should be for our schools. And there were many times that I met with school board members one-on-one, and I said, hey, this is one of the issues that we're having. Can you help support us? I met with the superintendent, separately also saying, hey, this is an issue. What can we do to get this done? And those were the ways that we were actually able to change multiple policies in my district because we had that communication with the school board. And, not, like I said before, not everything is going to be out there in the open. A lot of times you have those one-on-one conversations, especially with Sunshine Law. You have those one-on-one conversations saying, hey, this is what our families need from you. Is there any way that you would be able to support changing this policy? Or, sometimes the school board members would come to me and say, hey, I really need your help with this. Can you get parents to come and support this? Because this is something that we need, and they may be divided on the school board, right? So we were able to also help them on the back end and say, hey, we need parents to go to the school board member and speak on XYZ to make sure that we get this done.
Well, Beth, it's kind of funny that you asked that because that's what got me working for Jimmy and getting involved in getting new school board members on the board, like the three of you. Talking to our school board members and going through this and having the conversations with Terry Connor, and leaving and asking in public comment. We have student advisory councils. We have superintendent advisory councils. I have been requesting for over 4 months for a parental advisory council, which the district would have to provide. But since we can't get that, we've reached out to PTA. And that's where we're at. Sorry, that's the raw truth. I have asked Superintendent Connor, and I continue to work with them, and I love working with them. And if that would be an option that they would hear, there are board members that do hear it, but it has to be put up to that vote. And the things that they are now trying to do, if you guys want to pay attention to something at the upcoming meeting and at the upcoming meetings, they are actually trying to attempt to change the language in district policy for PTO, PTA, and boosters. So that does affect everybody in Sarasota County.
Well, and this is what I was going to say, is that's the other thing you can do is change policy, because in the county that your current superintendent may or may have not come from, they have policy in their school, in their policy it says that PTA is the parent organization of choice. And there are multiple reasons for that. There's safety nets as far as finances, because you go through audits every year. There's a number of reasons. So you can get policy changed to say this is the choice of our school district.
Which may be why he suggested that we look into you guys.
Yeah. Oh, do you have time for 2 more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's one right here.
Stan, I see your hand. Oh, 3 more. Okay.
Am I next? Yes. Actually, I was so glad that you brought up marketing. I've had the pleasure of working with 3 of you up here, and it's just been fantastic. And I want to mention that the League of Women Voters has been very deliberate in its marketing for effective school board candidates, and there are brochures in Spanish, English, and Russian out on the table there. We also have a brochure that it's actually in my car, and I'm going to put it out on the table, but it is on school choice. And it outlines very specifically what some of the differences are between the traditional public school, the charter school, and the private school. And those are really important. And what we've been doing in terms of marketing, we've been putting these in public libraries. I've been out there at various Tiger Bay meetings, giving them out. It's just so important, this marketing idea. And I encourage the PTA, if it is established in Sarasota, that you work also with the League of Women Voters, because we support you. We really, really want the public schools to succeed. It is part of our policy issues. So, you know, I thank you for being here, and let's just make sure we work together. Thank you.
Just to let you know that in every single one of the other counties, when I was at my county, we partnered every single year with the League of Women Voters to make sure that we're holding those school board forums, because although we are nonpartisan, we give everyone the chance to see them answer the questions, and obviously people make their choices off of that, and sometimes it's very obvious what's the right choice and what's the not the best choice. But we partner consistently with League of Women Voters. We a huge partnership for us. So thank you.
Shelley, League of Women Voters actually has a panel coming up for the different candidates. So definitely be in touch and look out for that.
We have someone.
You're next. Oh, yes. Okay, I'm from Illinois, but I just wanted to encourage everyone to, I know the woman that spoke earlier about, I hope that you're translating things for the Hispanic communities. Mm-hmm. It's a really good way to get in touch with them and maybe get things in their book bags and encourage them to come, but have it in their own language, and in that way they can become involved too. I think some of them become really intimidated because maybe they don't speak English very well, but they do understand. And so if you could have maybe an interpreter there to encourage them to be part of it, because it seems like there's a large population of Hispanic families. So I just wanted to mention that could maybe get them involved. Do you translate everything for them?
One of the things that was really important in working with our district here was making sure that we had translation in Spanish, Portuguese, Russian. We had Czech as well as different in paper and in subtitles.
I really commend you for that. That's wonderful.
We made sure that everybody was able to communicate.
My other question, I have one more. I was involved with special ed, but I know that special ed is a federal program. It's federally mandated. So have the funds from the federal government been taken away for special ed?
They haven't been taken away. They are remaining generally level, but we don't. But that being said, there's no, like, the department stripped, the lack of enforcement, you know, there's all of that.
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
Yeah, and it's not fully funded.
Can we have him?
Please, he's going to raise his hand for
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question that should be going towards you guys or if you have an answer to it, but I've been wondering about it and observing some things as I worked. And I just wanted to put it out there somehow, but I think as a working class person, I've observed that I think there's a lot of working class children that are growing up fast, and I think that's always been the case, but for me it's strange to see it happening nowadays because I think there's a lot of resources that could be going to further their education. And there is a chunk of working class families that are immigrant, but not all of them are immigrant. And a lot of these children are kind of, I don't think they feel represented by the education system or feel like it is as accessible as it is for wealthier families, and they go into labor jobs and don't really think they have a possibility of pursuing a further education. And I had a question if what could be done to make working class families feel more represented in the education system?
Well, I mean, I think locally here in Sarasota, one thing that we can do is elect officials that represent our demographic and reach out to the families and the people who are here, that live here with us, that are experiencing it, the directly impacted families. And that's how we spread the word.
All right, good. We've got a question here. The parent involvement is very inspiring and exciting, and I love what the PTA is doing. And as a retired ESE teacher from Sarasota County, where and how can teachers be involved in this? Especially, I think some are also concerned about repercussions. But is there a place for us?
So absolutely, we have our text and our other means of communication. A lot of the moms are level 2 volunteers, so we're in the classroom and we're talking to the teachers. The teachers are working with us, but we have to protect them too. Unfortunately, we learned that the hard way. We lost, over 13 staff at Wilkinson in a 12-week period. So as SRQ Parents United, we are cognizant with the teachers that do work with us and are involved with us to make sure if they want to be anonymous, they stay anonymous, but we get their message out, and we speak up for them, because we can't do this alone. We need paras. We need behavioral coaches. We need mental health coaches. We need district members. We need community partners. We need policy writers. And everybody needs to come to the table and work as a community.
And I just wanted to say that I was listening to what you were talking about, going to IEP meetings and how those can be very intimidating. And I get that, and I found that those meetings went so much better, and the child was able to reach their goals so much better when the teacher and parent worked together. I had no problem meeting with a parent the day before and say, this is what I'm gonna say, this is what I'm looking at, what do you think? And I think it just alleviated, some of that stress going in, so that when we did get there, we could really talk specifics about what was needed and how we can go about doing it. I loved it.
The transparency and asking for reports and knowing how to advocate and what to advocate for in your IEP journey and your ESE journey is something that an advocate's experience comes, there is nothing else like that. But as a parent, you can do that.
Just to add, so in PTA, the T actually stands for teachers. That's the point. We want you involved. And we recognize that oftentimes it's your job, right? So you can't technically say something and, so that's where that partnership comes in. The PTA board will take concerns to the principal. I have had multiple people be kind of like whistleblowers, where we do keep them, whoever has the concern, we do keep it quiet. We protect you as much as we can. And we partner with the teachers union. We actually, I was gonna talk about this at the next thing, but we sued the administration to make sure that our schools got the funding, and we partnered with the teachers union to get that done. So 100%, teachers are vital for PTA.
I just need to add one thing, which is that in Sarasota, not only do we want to, we're thinking about how do we better organize parents, and definitely teachers would be a part of that. With Wilkinson, definitely all the teachers were scared. That's their job, but they couldn't do anything about it. What's going on? It's hey, we can be the voice, because they're not firing me. They're not firing me and Jody, but they're gonna, but they'll have to listen to it. So how do we partner and have that relationship? We were forging some of that, but even the misunderstanding from teachers in Sarasota County. Sarasota teachers union, and apologies if there's any union reps or like that. It's the only union in the entire state that's not part of FEA, NEA, AFT. Okay? And I just have to say, just as a community member, I don't know how much it's served our community that they're not part of that necessarily, but over the last few, and now granted, maybe yes, maybe no, maybe it's like, but having more voice and understanding that in conversations with the teachers, even at our school, where it's like, well, run for something, right? Like engage and meet, and I think if anything, it's like meeting and having spaces that are little connected. That's what PTA could mean for Sarasota County, is that Wilkinson parents are related to other, that we have a connection to these other schools, and we can have these connections with parents. But I mean, that's definitely something that I just wanted to throw out there. That's like PTA, it is an interesting place, and I think, are we prepared for the future of education and all these attacks with sort of a system that we've had from like the 90s, if you will? Like, are we prepared for the future? It's just together. It's just having to be more in real, like to be real that, are we set up, and like, do we have the organized systems in our county to take us to where we need to go?
Thank you very much to our panel. I'd like huge round of applause. I think next year maybe this group should sponsor the event, because you parents, you're important. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. A couple of housekeeping things. We are going to break for lunch, which is across the way in the room called the Gallery. If you didn't order a lunch, we've got some extras. If you did order a lunch, there's in front of each of the 6 different types of lunch, there's a list with names on that. But before we leave, I'd like, we talked a lot about, or a lot of people touched on this today, we're never going to affect change until we do something about our state legislature. That is really, really, really important. So Julie Forestier is going to give a couple of words about an event that that we want to bring forward next week after next now. Yeah, it keeps moving. That I think could go a long way to solving some of our problems if we could get her attention.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to talk really quickly. So I'm Julie Forrester, president of the Democratic Women's Club of Sarasota County. I just want to say I love the energy here, right? Seeing so many people here on a Saturday to protect public education really, really excites me. And so I want to tell you about a quick opportunity that we have to turn this energy into action, like Lisa mentioned. Next Tuesday, we are taking this fight directly to our representatives' doorsteps. We are hosting a Stop the Cut, Save Sarasota Schools press conference, press conference and rally outside of Representative McFarland's office starting at 3 p.m. That's at 2700 South Tamiami Trail. The timing is intentional because at 3 p.m. school pickup traffic backs up along 41, and that is directly where her office is right by Southside Elementary. So that means families, her constituents, will see us. They will see our signs, they will see our message, and they will know exactly what's happening to our schools. This is about accountability, it's about transparency, and it's about making sure no one can ignore what these cuts are doing to our schools. So we need you there, loud, visible, holding your signs, and standing up for public education with us. We're also looking for parents who have a child that's been impacted. If you've lost a teacher, a behavioral specialist, or critical support, or know someone who has, please come and see me after this. I'd love to have you there and share your story and your voice. And so you can get more information on our website at Sarasota.org. And so I just hope you join us, show up, bring your signs, and bring your support. Oh, sorry, it is Tuesday, Tuesday, April 28th. So it's not this Tuesday, next Tuesday in front of Representative McFarland's office, 2700 South Tamiami Trail from 3 p.m. until 5 p.m. We hope to see you there.